Welcome to The Culture Edit, your weekly roundup of all things work and culture. Hosted by Nikki and Chad Strickland, co-founders of Niche Culture, a strategic consultancy and creative agency helping some of the world's top brands define, articulate, and promote their culture to their employees and the world. Podcast number 5. We're still ticking away at it, but we want to say welcome to all our new listeners this week because I think we'll have quite a few new listeners based on the interview we're doing, and we're really excited about it. But first, we'll get into a little bit of what our week has been so far. So a lot of training, 15 to 20-hour blocks.
Wait, I wanted to welcome the new listeners, too.
Okay.
Welcome, new listeners.
Profound. Profound welcome.
Well, welcome ATL, PTN listeners. First time. We'll have a lot of those.
Any first-timers out there?
Maybe Chisel will listen.
Yeah. So training this week. Did some group rides, went to Lion Chaser. Shout out to Jamal. He's an amazing instructor at Lion Chaser Fitness. If you haven't been there, it's one of my favorite group workout classes in Atlanta.
Your favorite class?
It is, yeah. I mean, it is my favorite. There's some Pilates. I like Stellar Bodies. I used to go there all the time before they shut down the location close to me, but this is totally different. This is more like a weightlifting, I want to say CrossFit, but heavier weightlifting class focused on targeted areas, which I really like.
We've got a lot of questions like, why are we doing so much training right now? We've got a big event coming up. Steamboat Gravel will be mid-August.
Shout out to Micah.
Our good friend Micah Rice. We've got a whole crew from Atlanta going to Steamboat for the second year in a row. It's actually a bigger group this year.
The main reason I want to say thank you, Micah, is because initially you had signed us up on accident for the tandem competition.
Could you imagine?
Two problems with that. One, we don't have a tandem bike. We've never ridden on a tandem bike. And two, based on listeners that know the canoe kayak controversy, know that this would be a complete disaster.
Yeah, they would need a marriage counselor at the finish line if we tried to do a tandem ride. Do you know why I did that though?
No, I don't know.
So, because we did Rebecca's Private Idaho, also an amazing event in Ketchum, which I highly would recommend, which we need to go back to. But we registered that. They had a duo team category.
That was fun.
So it's called duo. And you and I, you say it was fun now, but you were mad at me the entire race until the end, whenever you realized that we were on the podium.
No, we just missed the podium.
Oh, I thought we got third.
I think we got 4th.
Oh, but everyone that beat us was two guy.
Well, yeah, it was all men.
But that's what I thought. I guess when I was registering for Steamboat, I thought that's what we were doing because we decided we would race it together this year. I did the 140 last year. You did the 100. So anyway, Micah immediately saw that and texted me. I was like, "What? Y'all are doing tandems now?" So anyway, thanks for fixing that.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's always impressive. Like so there's the single track section. I mean, it's double track, I guess you could say, but how do you, that would be really hard to do tandem. I could barely do it by myself.
I don't know. I'm always amazed when I see these tandem, especially when it's couples.
It's impressive.
Riding, like I'm barely surviving and then they're like blasting down the hill past me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, glad we're doing that. You asked about Tucker. Tucker is a group ride in Atlanta. For those of folks that don't ride bikes, Atlanta has a huge cycling community and culture here, probably the best in the country. Tucker is probably the most infamous group ride outside of the airport ride in the winter. It's got everything. I mean, it's not scenic. It's pretty terrible in terms of the route, but it's been going on for, I think, 40 years. Van Purser founded it. And there's an A, B, and C. We always do the A. I've been doing the A for 22 years. And this past weekend or past Saturday was crazy because we had 3 terrible crashes. One, for those folks that have done the Tucker ride, the 50-mile-an-hour descent that everyone's always afraid of, we finally, after 20 plus years, had a crash on that, which was absolutely terrible. And our friend Nick went away in an ambulance. So that was pretty terrible. And then completely unrelated, later on, we had a dog run into the peloton, which caused a crash. And then lastly, completely unrelated, on the access road, we had another crash where a guy went away in an ambulance. So it was pretty bad. We're already talking, kind of the folks that all the different club directors are talking about what we can do to be different about that. I don't think any of them were other than the last one, was definitely rider fault, but the others were, it was just random. Just
Yeah.
it's bike riding.
I mean, when you have so many people in a group riding bikes together, I mean, it's bound to happen, but it is pretty crazy that happened. There's 3 crashes on one ride because that's rare.
Yeah, we haven't had a crash this year
Yeah.
on the A ride. There are, I will say, so sidebar, so there are more people trying to do the A ride that don't have the skills to do the A ride. Thanks to our great friends at Wahoo for making smart trainers and making a lot of people really strong. But they don't ride outside in groups, and then they're strong enough to stick, but they don't have the handling skills that you need to do an A-level ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I could do a whole podcast on that. I won't.
Earlier this week, so talking about injuries, earlier this week, I was just tired and I felt like my body was all stiff and everything from last week's training. So Monday, I booked a massage and I went up to this place, and I am definitely gatekeeping it because I don't want anyone to know about it. But that's not the point. Do you ever have a massage? And I don't know if you've ever had a massage where they do like acupressure type stuff.
No, I've never.
Along with the massage. Well, I always feel like when they're doing the acupressure, and so they're massaging your neck, you're like, oh, this is great. And they get to one spot on your neck or your shoulder or back, and they press for a really long time. And in my head, I'm always like, oh my God, did they find cancer? Like they're some wizards, you know? Like I always feel like this masseuse people are wizards of sorts.
You think they found a lump? They're like stop mid massage because they found a lump, and they're like, oh, do I tell this girl or not, or just let her go on about her way?
Exactly. Like she was like massaging like the base of my skull, you know, like doing that whole thing, and she like stops for like a really dramatic long pause. And the first thing, I think I'm just paranoid. The first thing that pops in my head is, she's found a lump. I'm going to die. And then she continues the massage, which then I'm like, wait, so is she withholding?
Why don't you ask? Why don't you be like, why did you stop there?
I don't know, because am I crazy? Do other people think this? Please tell me if other people feel this way when they're getting a massage.
Okay.
But I didn't ask because, well, she didn't speak English, so there was a language barrier.
I'd say next time ask, and let's see what the response is.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So yeah, that was the beginning of my week. But I thought that was kind of, I'm always curious if other people's brains are as messed up as mine.
Yeah. A lot of feedback on restaurant recommendations. So after the Tucker, I got home. Luckily, Nikki did not do Tucker this week. Normally she does. I would have been really scared if you had been there.
It's because I didn't do Tucker that the gods of Tucker came down to punish everyone.
Maybe. You took me to El Torsoro, my favorite Mexican place, for margaritas and the best tacos in Atlanta. Would you agree?
Best tacos in Atlanta, hands down.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
They're so good. Then last night we had another fun little outing. Our friend at Cat Eye Creative, Adam, had his summer splash event where he's showcasing a lot of different artists. So he owns this art gallery
for emerging artists in Atlanta and beyond.
Yeah. And he had kind of just like a showcase of all of his artists that he currently has under his umbrella at the gallery. And we went down there to check it out. There was so many people. They had a DJ, you know.
It's like a club.
Pouring drinks. We were tired, so we weren't able to stay for too long, but it was really fun to check out. And if you haven't been to Cat Eye Creative, follow them on Instagram so you can get kind of the latest on when they do their gallery exhibitions. Because there's some good stuff.
Very cool stuff. We've gotten quite a few pieces from Adam. And we took Michael Garrison for the first time, and he was pretty blown away. I think he took like 500 pictures. We told him about how art world works business-wise. So
yeah, he was pretty intrigued.
Yeah. So that was fun. And then now, pod feedback, like we continue to get lots of great positive feedback, and we're really always welcoming of that. I think what we've been doing is really thinking about the format, and this format that we've been working on, everyone seems to like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to friend of the podcast, Linda Matzagite. She sent us a really nice email this morning, Sunday morning, about how much she's enjoying the podcast and the format and the content. And not gonna lie, we were pretty exhausted today getting back from the ride, and it was really hard to get motivated to come into the office. But that, just something small like that, and a nice, kind email can really motivate you to keep going. So,
your energy level went way up.
Lesson of the day, just you never know what kind words can do for someone.
One person, that's all it takes.
Thank you.
One thing that we need to talk about real quick, tour update, Tour de France. It's unbelievable that we're now over 2 weeks into the tour. We've got 2 guys that are less than 10 seconds apart. This may end up being the most dramatic and exciting Tour de France in the history. We've got a time trial on Tuesday. They're both really good time trialists. I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be crazy. It could be your dream could finally come true where Paris, the last stage, actually matters.
I hope it does, because for those that don't follow the tour, the ride into Paris, the last stage, they always have, the iconic ride into Paris. It's always decided already. You kind of know who's winning. And so it's not, the sprinters will sprint it out at the end for an exciting show. But typically the yellow jersey, it's already decided based on time.
They even have like champagne in there.
Everything. Yeah. So it's kind of like a little anticlimactic, other than it's a cool display and beautiful because it's Paris. So I hope it's a battle to the end. I think that would be really exciting.
I think it might be. What's going on in the world of work before we get our guest, because we do have a lot of folks that are very interested in the world of work. I think the biggest thing, and you'll see it's in the newsletter this week, it's the first article. Everyone is worried about the wrong strike. Everyone's focused on the actors and the writers striking in Hollywood. And, outside of our good friend Brady Rogers, that's not really impacting anyone. And the reality of, because we've got so much content on Netflix and Hulu, that you'll be fine. But the real strike that matters is UPS. UPS looks like they're going to go on strike on July 31st. The Teamsters and management have not been able to come to an agreement on their new collective bargaining agreement. And it's, I think the estimate was it's $7 billion for a 10-day work stoppage.
The largest in history.
Yeah, largest in history. A lot of businesses are already taking up contingency plans.
We've had clients email us preemptively and say, get ready to ship everything FedEx, because UPS is going on strike. Yeah,
which is scary. If you live in Atlanta, think about all of those packages going to Ellenwood. But yeah, it's going to be, people aren't talking about this. This is going to impact everyone.
And Ellenwood is the Ellenwood FedEx.
The dark
distribution warehouse.
Yes.
Where things go in and they never come out again. I don't even understand what's happening in that facility.
Yeah. So let's talk about our guest. We had previewed last week that Joanna Durr was going to be our guest, our partner, documentary filmmaker, strategist, culture expert. She got pushed back a week. We have recorded with Joanna, but some things have come up that we needed to bring Andrea in as our first guest. So out of the gates, as the kids would say, fire for the first guest, right?
Is that what kids say?
That's what Michael says.
Fire.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, yeah, Michael's our kid in residence, right?
Yeah.
This week's guest is Andrea Pagnanelli. She's the CEO of the National Cycling League, the NCL. Many of you are familiar with this if you are a cyclist. She has over 15 years of experience in sports and has held executive roles in the NFL, NBA, MLS, and WSL. She's named one of Fortune's 30 Under 30, honored as Woman of Influence by New York Business Journal, and is a graduate of Brown University, where she played D1 soccer. So we're really excited about our guest this week.
So you want to talk about why we moved Andrea up as our first guest?
Yeah, so we have had Andrea on our list, of course, because she's an amazing person and great leader. But we moved her up this week because of some recent press that had come out about the NCL. And we felt that, it didn't necessarily tell the whole story.
I don't know if I'd call it press. I think clickbait story and Velo News, which, sorry, they rebranded to Velo. Ironically, they dropped the news part.
And it shows.
Yeah. But, we've been working with NCL behind the scenes. So we've gotten to know Paris Wallace and the team at the NCL. And so when we saw the article... We
had a perspective of this article does not reflect reality.
Well, first of all, we found out that Velo had not even reached out to the NCL for comment. So the entire article you read, and I forgot what the title was, but it was like turmoil at NCL. All they did was reach out to some former some former employees and partners who just said no comment. And then this entire article draws all these, it's like stirring up rumor.
Yeah, it draws all these conclusions, and they never talk to anyone at NCL.
Right. So it's not journalism. And
No.
I think that's really important. What's sad about that is Velo News used to be such an important media element for cycling fans in America. They were bought by outside. And then since then, you just see it going like.
Well, there's been a massive layoffs.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the interesting part. A lot of the actual journalists, like Kaylee Fretz and those guys, they got laid off by outside, and they went and started the Escape Collective, which we are subscribers to, and it's actual journalism. It's amazing, but I don't think a lot of people, legacy folks that follow Velo News, probably don't know about that. But I would give definitely, and this is definitely a free ad for Escape Collective. But we were talking about this with Ian. It's good. It's really, really good. And you go to Velo News or Velo, and there's just nothing there. But yeah, so I guess we'll never have an ad from outside or Velo now.
I don't really care.
So let's get into it with Andrea. I think everyone's going to be pretty blown away by this. Andrea is super dynamic. She is very transparent with us. We make sure we asked her all of the questions that you want to hear. And this isn't just about cycling. This is about a business. This is about running a business. This is about running a startup, which is even harder. It's about leadership. It's about culture.
Transformation, pivoting.
Yeah.
So even if you are not a cycling fan, I think the information you can take out of this interview is so powerful, because it really is. It's a cycling business, but it's a business.
It's a sports league business. And
exactly.
that's what I think is so compelling about Andrea's experience, because she's worked in the NFL, the MLS, the National Women's Soccer League. She gets it. She understands what it takes to build a league. And so enjoy. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
I'm great. Excited to be here.
Yeah, nice Friday morning meetup, even though we've talked a few times earlier this week already. But we're really excited to do this interview and help people learn more about the NCL.
Joining us from Williamsburg today.
From Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Nice. So one of my good friends lives in Williamsburg. And so every time we go to New York, we pop over to see her. And she took us to a couple places that I have to mention because they were good. Cafe Mogador.
Yeah, it's amazing. I live right by there, actually.
It's so good. And then we also went to Westlight, which is like a rooftop bar that overlooks the water and everything. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, amazing views of New York City. I love it here. I've been in New York City for 13 years, but in COVID, I actually moved to Williamsburg and wish I did earlier.
Where were you before that?
Everywhere, really. Upper West Side, East Village, West Village. I moved to New York after Brown, and the only time I left was there was a 2-year stint where I moved out to LA when my mom got breast cancer, and I'd worked for LAFC. But otherwise, I really consider New York to be home.
You weren't tempted to stay in LA with the 72 and sunny every single day?
I wasn't. I don't love driving. I don't like having a car or sitting in traffic. I like being mobile. And after spending so much time on the East Coast, because I went to school out here, you ultimately end up building a community. And it's hard to give that up.
Yeah, we can relate to that. That's, even though we are in a driving city, we live in the only probably walkable neighborhood in Atlanta, Inman Park. You'll see when you come, and our office is here. So we totally can relate to that.
It's hard to get out of your bubble once you have that bubble created. So talking about your mom, because we are friends on various social platforms, and I noticed that you post about your family and specifically your mom a lot about being a huge inspiration. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about her and kind of her influence on how you've gotten here?
Yeah, so my parents got married super young. They got married when they were 19, had kids at 20, 22, and 25. So I grew up in a very humble upbringing, as we would say. My dad rode crew at USC with 3 kids. My mom was at Long Beach College and then had 3 babies while in law school. And so just seeing her grow into being one of the top partners at a law firm, she's really been an inspiration to me as a woman in the top of her field, and just how she runs her life as being a wife, a mother, a leader, a professional. And I just think she exudes everything that I try to be on a daily basis. When she got sick, it was really hard for me. I think it was that wake-up call I needed. When I graduated Brown, I was heads down for about 10 years in really just building my career. And it was that wake-up call of there is more to life. I think it's allowed me to be a better leader, because it allowed me to lead with more empathy, and just understand that you can't pour from an empty cup. But it was a tough time for sure, but she's better now and back working full time, kicking butt, taking names, being the boss that she is.
And like any good mother who's a lawyer, she told you you did not want to be a lawyer, right?
She did. Isn't that hilarious?
That's coming from a reformed lawyer,
Yes.
so I can relate to that because I don't have kids, but if I did, that's what I'd tell them.
Yeah, but she did say you can be anything you want, right? That was instilled since we were little. You can take on the world and do anything you want, but be a lawyer.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Tell us about your experience playing soccer at Brown.
Yeah, I mean, Brown was the right experience for me. At the time growing up, I was on 3 different teams. I was on the SoCal Blues, which was the #1 club team at the time in the US. I was on Mater Dei, my high school team, as well as the Olympic development team. So soccer took up, I would say, most of my free time, if not all of it. And so by the time I was looking at schools, I needed a bit more balance. And when I stepped foot on Brown for my official visit, I got a nice breath of fresh air that wouldn't be the case.
You still kick the ball around?
I do. So I'm in a Monday night league, and this will age me a bit. I used to play in the games that started at like 8, 9, 10, 11. I have games at 6 or 6:50 because at some point, I just get too tired. And I can't play at 11 o'clock at night anymore. I'm already in a REM cycle.
I get that.
Yeah, we do weeknight group rides that start at 6. So like last night we get home at 9, but the adrenaline is still going so hard that you can't fall asleep. So we can totally relate to that. So do you do anything outside of that Monday night? Like how do you are you running? What do you do?
I love to run. I have a Peloton. I love to lift weights. I did that this morning. I love HIIT classes, but I think, I'm an athlete in my core. My parents changed my birth certificate when I was young, so I could play earlier.
That's amazing.
And I think I will continue to stay active indefinitely.
When you come to Atlanta, if you have time, because I love going to the gym. I love workout classes. I have like a million different workout classes that we could go to. There is a really good weightlifting one in Buckhead called Lion Chaser that I like to go to. So if you have time, let me know and we can go hit up a workout class together.
That'd be great.
I'm curious, what's your gym of choice or your workout class of choice in Brooklyn, or if you go over to Manhattan?
So I'm a member of Equinox. That sounds very bougie.
It is bougie. It doesn't just sound bougie.
But we wish we had one.
We do.
Atlanta,
we wish we had one.
No judgment there.
But I just love the routine of it. So even this morning, just lifting for 30 minutes and sitting in the steam room for 15, it's just a wonderful way to start your day.
So you can relate to this then. So we go to the gym every morning also. There's one in our neighborhood in addition to the one Nikki goes to in Buckhead. And Friday is a day we definitely go. But we woke up this morning, 4 a.m., to a pipe that burst on the top floor. We have a brownstone, three levels. And so a pipe had burst, and we spent our morning cleaning up water. And I think what we were most angry about was
we couldn't make it to the gym. I was like, could it not just like burst at a better time where I could at least go to the gym?
Yeah.
yeah, that's been our morning.
Yeah, our morning's been kind of crazy. Let's kind of dig into the elephant in the room, which is you are not a cyclist, yet you're the CEO of the NCL.
To address the elephant in the room, although I'm not a cyclist, I'm an avid cycling fan, sports fan, and have worked in 5 major professional sports leagues. I've been in the sports industry for 16 years now. And when you think about my career, the majority of that has been in sports startups. So pretty confident in my ability at this point to build something from the ground up in this industry. For me, it's, I look at hiring practices and, the best leaders hire A players and sometimes hire for their weaknesses. And we have a wonderful team. And people who've worked in sports, haven't worked in sports, people who've worked in cycling and haven't worked in cycling. And I think with that combination, we are pretty capable to solve most problems. I've also sat in a chair at the NCL for 7 months before taking on the role of CEO, and have been able to really assess, the industry and now bring my perspective, having built startups within sports to the NCL. And I think that's what's going to help bring us into the future.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to highlight is that the NCL is more than bike racing. It's more than, the traditional format of crit racing that we see in America. It's a business. And it's a startup, and it's an ever-changing and evolving, really exciting startup. So do you want to kind of walk us through what the transition has been from when this was just a dream of, the 4 races and getting it out there and getting the league launched to where we are now and where we've had to pivot in between?
Great question. So first, we've had a lot of successes. We have 2 of the most accomplished teams in the ACC. We are continuing to invest in our community and our community partners with Bearings Bike Works and Wish for Wheels. And we put on one tremendously successful event in Miami with 20,000 people in attendance. With that being said, we are very early. This is my 4th sports startup. And with any startup, the first year is always the most challenging. And what we're doing is really focusing on the foundation that we need to build, testing the market and iterating. And that's why, over the course of the last probably 60 days, 90 days, you've seen some of those changes and iterations to really allow us to set ourselves up for 2024.
Yeah, and I'm sure coming from outside the sport, you've noticed that people within the sport have a real tremendous passion for cycling, right? And I'm sure you see that in every sport. It's different, I think, with cycling because you can do the sport every day yourself, right? Like if you're a football fan, most football fans aren't playing football unless they're throwing around the backyard or something. But most cycling fans that are super passionate, like do it. But they also have, and I'm one of them, because I've been riding a bike competitively for over 20 years. They've got, I think, very clear ideas about how the sport works because they're just used to that. Like they grow up crit racing, or just watching road cycling. And so have you noticed that, like coming from the outside, how there are very clear perceptions around how the sport should work versus coming in with a completely new idea, which is what Paris had, right? Like that was Paris's whole idea, was to do something completely different. And kind of talk us through how you've seen that work and how that's kind of, I think, interacted with the decision-making process that you guys have been going through.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest comparison I can relate to is it reminds me a lot of the women's soccer fan base. Also very tight-knit, passionate, even though in the same vein, you can't just get up every day and have your casual fan play professional women's soccer. But I do think that, there's a keener eye on all of our decisions. I do think people are rooting for us to succeed, but definitely questioning some of the decisions that we've made. I think with that, it's going to take patience. Startups take time, sports properties take time. When you look at the MLS, for example, they started in the heels of the World Cup in 1995. They almost failed a few times. And most recently, their San Diego expansion team had a price tag of $500 million. I say this to the team constantly, and I'm sure they're sick of me saying it, but we have to trust in the process. And we already have a 1-year strat plan. A lot of the changes I made was so that our 3-year strategy plan can come to life. And a lot of it's just going to take patience, planning. And that's really the name of the game when it comes to what we're building. And what I love about cycling fans in this industry is the love that everyone has for the sport. I've been a part of building fandom and what it takes to do that. I can walk through my ideas of how we get there, but having people come along with us for the ride is what I'm excited for.
Yeah, so I think we'd love to hear that. I mean, I want to hear about the ideas around fandom, because I think it's, we've seen it because we go to Europe to watch races. It's a lot different type of passionate fan that you see there versus you see here. And we've always said there's so much opportunity to build more passion around teams and brands in cycling in America, but no one's really done it.
Yeah, I mean, I think here it's so interesting because you have a little bit of people go to races to watch their friends, but there's not a whole, you don't see like the licensing push, the branding push that you see with other, major league sports or professional sports where fans are going to cheer for people they don't necessarily know, but they identify with their characters or their branding or their personal branding. Whereas if you go to Europe and you go to, Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, there's so many fans that are wearing the kits of their favorite cycling star. They're on, the side of the road rooting for, and you can't race obviously in World Tour races. And so they're just there, not because they necessarily know the racer, but because they've built this amazing brand around the teams, the culture, and then the individuals. And it seems like that's what NCL is trying to do, bridge that gap in America.
We'll get there. So there's a few different levers to pull to make this happen. And this will be the last soccer analogy I make, I swear. But real-time example, look at what happened with Messi when he went to Inter Miami. That MLS team was giving away tickets, selling them for $10. Within 24 hours of Messi signing, they sold out tickets within 24 hours for every home game and away game. And the secondary market, tickets are going as much as Taylor Swift. That is now I think they're at 7 million in social media followers. So more than any NFL team, NBA team. When you think about building fandom, right, and building a fan base, it starts with athletes and that storytelling, then teams, then league. You don't see a lot of people walking around as much with NFL, on their shirts. It's the team, and that starts with them falling in love with certain athletes. So how do we do that? First, we got to do that with TV. We have a great partnership with GCN, but continuing to double down on that. And what I think is great is cycling as a whole is getting a lot more exposure. And as we continue to do that across the board, not only for NCL, but for all of these races, fandom will continue to be built. And so just working on that generally, like cycling is crazy, right? But, people are excited about what's happening. But when you look at the other ACC races, right, all ships rise with the tide. And that will be my mentality always. But we need to continue to elevate the sport and allow more accessibility across the board. And then the other thing too is, just more content. So when you look at some of the foundational pieces that we're implementing, there's a company that uses AI to basically cut video in real time. So the NBA uses them, and their mantra is 300 flowers bloom daily. They cut 300 pieces of content using this platform across all of their international channels. They've never worked with cycling before, but with NCL, because we are laps, we have a pit, we have crashes, our model looks very similar to what they built out for IndyCar in their platform. And so they showed us how they did it for IndyCar, and then they uploaded our past GCN broadcast. And they can use AI for all 10 of our teams, all of the 60 athletes, and they will automatically have clips upon clips upon clips with like logo bugs, right? These, just being able to get access to that, all of these athletes, right, will be able to then help leverage these algorithms. What's being leveraged right now? Reels on Instagram, right? So just being able to be a tool to provide more access for everyone. So again, we will continue to implement a lot of these best practices that are being used across all leagues and teams, but ensuring that we're helping elevate this sport, these athletes, their stories. But again, it's going to be a process, and it's not going to happen overnight.
And I think that's a really good point to make, because you were talking, in a good segue, you were talking about accessibility, and accessibility is defined in so many ways. And I think to the average cycling fan, when they think of accessibility to races, they think of being there in person. But really the NCL, how are you defining accessibility through what you just talked about? It's almost all the different channels.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, in an ideal world, accessibility is access across TV, our events, to our athletes. A lot of the backlash we've seen recently amongst us changing our events was around the Atlanta event being a VIP event only. That was a really tough decision, and, would love to walk through that. But we've made some other additions to the Atlanta schedule, like the qualifier with Barry's Bike Works, and ensuring that, profits from those tickets were going to Barry's Bike Works, to ensure that we are doubling down on our commitment to community as one of our core pillars as an organization. But it's one, like getting more bikes in the hands of kids through Wish for Wheels, bringing more awareness to our athletes, to our fans. We're all in this together, right? It's not about me. It's about the fans. It's about these athletes. It's about this community.
Yeah, and I think it's really just that accessibility comes in so many different forms, and it's so important to remember that, because most sports you don't have the ability to just walk down and watch a football game. And so, but there's other great ways to do it. You go to your local bar with your friends and you watch it on TV. And it sounds like the potential content that's going to be generated through AI allows even more free accessibility through Instagram, through TikTok, through whatever platform that will be released on. So it's actually elevating the accessibility digitally for people that can't even go to a bike race in person. So it's flipping that mindset and really just doing what other professional sports are doing.
Yeah, and let's talk about Atlanta, and for our listeners that have no idea what we're talking about in terms of cycling, because we do have quite a few of those. Typically, a criterium race is in a city square or somewhere that's very accessible for people just to walk up during the middle of the day. And they typically have amateur events involved as well. And so people are just used to walking up and watching a race. And not many of them have even coverage or television screens. It's really just you're kind of listening to an announcer. What Atlanta's going to be is going to look a lot different than that. And I think that's where you've heard some criticism from, I think, folks that are used to that format. Can you walk us through how that's going to be different? And we know that there was originally intention for Atlanta to be downtown. Kind of how did we end up at Porsche, and how's that going to look different?
And as Chad mentioned, that was exactly what our Miami event looked like. And I mentioned, as we, built out a 3-year strat plan, I needed to have different examples of what races could look like in different venues and at different price points. So adjusted, adapted. Originally being at Centennial Olympic Park would have been incredible. We had moved it from there because it was a lot for us to pull off in year one. And having the Porsche Experience Center come in, they were a great partner for us in regards to what they were able to offer us and the ability to test a different model. The downside of it is, the fact that it is a VIP event only, but it allows us to double down on our community mission, as I mentioned. We're trying something new for this year. It's close to the airport, so it's a bit restrictive in regards to what we're able to do from a fan perspective, but hopefully people will come out to the qualifying event, which is the night before at Barron's Bike Works. We're doing street sprints, food trucks, giveaways. So definitely a fun community event that night.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, the Porsche Experience Center is effectively a racetrack. It's a closed racetrack where Porsche, you can have different events in terms of experiencing driving a Porsche on a really fast track. And so it's going to look completely different than any of the type of criterium. It's not 4 corners. It's a lot of twists and turns.
Oh, it's
9 corners, right? Yeah. So it's going to look a lot different, which is probably going to look pretty cool on GCN, right? And I think that was the original intention, is thinking about it from that perspective. So yeah, it is very much an experiment, but if you could have had people on the side of the road, sounds like you would have.
100%. I mean, that's what Denver is. And, Denver is probably my favorite model to experiment with, only because of just what we're able to leverage in regards to growing our fan base and accessibility, and how we would potentially be able to scale because of the affordability of that type of course and that type of environment.
What is the Denver course? Because we're not familiar with it at all. What's going on there?
So the Denver course is at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. It's an MLS building in Commerce, Colorado. They have 24 soccer fields, parking lots. They do a lot of their academy races there, Spartan races, 5Ks. When you look at, we'll use the difference between normal criterium races where you shut down streets, you permit, you pay for police, you build VIP hospitality from scratch, restrooms from scratch. In this situation, it's a closed infrastructure, so we don't have to pay for permitting. Restrooms already exist. We're leveraging their VIP hospitality area right up against the stadium. There's still a couple of turns, so it's not a 4-corner crit, but in regards to cost, a lot has come down because you're leveraging an existing infrastructure who also has, things that we can leverage on site, from 3,000 feet of bike rack, walkie-talkies, Wi-Fi, power. It's an MLS building as well. So MLS does a 6-camera broadcast shoot, which is very similar to ours. So just a lot of this cost comes down. So when we look at scaling in 2024, our events will be a mix of everything. We're going to do some that look like Miami, some that look like this, depending on how Atlanta goes, some that look more like Atlanta, depending on just all these different factors. But it was really just experimenting so that we had a better take on, the models.
So Denver then is very much everyone come on down, bring the family, and have a great experience watching top level bike racing.
Free admission, free parking. Everyone who shows up on site gets a free Denver Disruptors koozie. We still have limited VIP tickets available. There'll be a full expo of all of our partners, other cycling partners. We have a few amateur rides. We're starting the day off with Wish for Wheels in the morning. And so each of our races just look a little bit different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Back to Atlanta, you mentioned Bearings Bike Works. Obviously, we're very familiar with them, but can you describe Bearings Bike Works as a philanthropic partner here in Atlanta and the relationship there with NCL?
This was a really important partnership, I think, for us as a whole. And when you think about the pillars of the NCL, which are, diversity and inclusion, community, and equality, and we are committed to doubling down on community. Bearings Bike Works has done tremendous work within the Atlanta organization, I think for 15 years, if I have that right. But even hearing the story of how they first started, where a neighborhood kid came over and, was asking to do, just some chores around the house, and had gotten a bike for doing some of this. And then she had brought some friends, and it kind of turned into a way to give back to the community. They opened up a brand new facility. And as a nonprofit, we wanted to ensure that we were giving back to an organization that was using bikes as a way to drive change. That is everything that we stand for as an organization. And so ensuring that we were doing everything that we could to help them succeed. Our tickets from our event on the 20th will help go to Bearings Bike Works. We are working with them on our qualifier event on the 19th. So we'd love people to just come out and see the great work that they're doing. And then also doing a community ride on July 22nd, which starts at their facility.
Yeah, Becky and Tim, the founders of Bearings, I know they're greatly appreciative of the partnership. And, from our perspective, Bearings means a lot to Atlanta and to the cycling community here. It's, every club, everyone that rides bikes, everyone that I think, and by the way, I say this a lot. I think Atlanta has the number one cycling community in the United States. I can't wait to hear the feedback on that. But I maybe Miami will get back to me on that one, but it's everything for us. It goes back to Bearings being this truly tremendous organization that they built from scratch that's benefiting the community so much because you're getting kids on bikes. They're earning bikes by working there. And you're right, the facility, which is very close to Hapeville, where the Porsche Experience Center is. I think having that event, the street sprints there, we're gonna have a lot of people down there for that.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for fans, even if you can't make it to the event on Sunday, I think it's so important to come out to the qualifier because it shows all these kids how much support there are for cyclists. And I think that can be really inspiring to kids seeing this is a really positive thing that I can do because I'm not just getting a bike, but I can actually race my bike and I can make a living out of this and I can have tons of people come out and support me, which I think is another part of Bearings that's unique is it's not just about working and building bikes and getting a bike. It's about providing kids with the support and the courage and the confidence to do everything else in their life.
Talk to us about the future, your vision for the future of NCL. It's interesting to me when you bring up Miami MLS team getting Messi. It automatically, what pops in my brain is, could the NCL be that entity where World Tour pros that are superstars towards the twilight of their career, could they come over and race NCL? Could we have Alaphilippe in the NCL one day? Is that possible? And what does that look like? I think just you coming into the sport from a fresh perspective and thinking about how this looks from other sports leagues.
I definitely think that's a possibility. I use that analogy a lot. And we are addressing how we're looking at the future of more teams and what's in store for 2024. I mean, that was part of how we ensure that we're set up for success. We are going to scale slowly, but scale the correct way. I think a lot of what was set out at the beginning for NCL still holds true. to really revolutionize the sport, build a sport that looks different than other leagues and teams. You know, having been in the MLS, NWSL, NBA, NFL, I haven't been in an organization with so much diversity and integrity towards inclusion. And I think that's, true across the board. Even when I speak with people across, cycling generally, they're, so supportive of innovation and change. And so I'm excited about, just maintaining what we set out to do, but doing it the right way, building the strategy and planning necessary to get it done, and being transparent with people about when we're going to get it done, how we're going to get it done, setting correct expectations, not only for our staff, our athletes, but also our fans, because we're all in this together. It's a very small industry, but excited to be in it.
Is the idea that one day the NCL could just be comprised of its own teams, like league teams, like the NFL or the MLS? Is that still something that we're thinking about?
I think that's a possibility. There right now, I think it's wonderful that there are teams outside of it. They have a lot of reach and wonderful stories and athletes that if we can continue to build a foundation of content resources, it'll just help elevate the game. So that could potentially change in the future, but right now it's going back to a bit more of, doubling down on what I mentioned earlier to ensure that we're providing a bit more assets to all 10 teams that are partaking within the NCL. We actually had a town hall, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where I spoke to all 10 teams and team managers and introduced myself, apologized for being a bit silent, but let them know that, I was heads down planning and making some necessary changes and getting the team to where it needed to go, but walk them through about a 30-page PowerPoint on our events, our qualifier, hotels, expectations, marketing requests. Here's what I need. Here's what you'll expect. And it was really just this full plan. And, just so they could see a bit more on how I operate and run things, but also what to expect moving forward and how we could help them too.
Yes, I can imagine they're then seeing there's a pretty significant value proposition in being part of the NCL. I just want to make sure there's a few other quick questions I want to touch on, and then I want to come back to your leadership and kind of, because this is what this podcast is about, by the way, is workplace culture too. I know there's a few other questions out there, like what happened to the DC race? I think that's important. And then also, what are we doing with the payout? I know NCL had made a pretty tremendous proclamation, I would say, and that was part of, I think, Paris's vision around pay equity, but then also the pretty large $1 million payout at the end of the year. I think there's questions around that, like what happens to those things now that we've had to pivot and make some changes. So start with DC, and then we'll go back to those.
Sure. I mean, DC was one of the hard decisions I had to make. And it was mostly because, coming from an athlete myself, being in this industry as long as I have, I wanted to ensure that we were committed to the promises we made to our athletes, to our fans, and the people that we brought on board to build this with us, and setting us up for the long term. Putting that event on would have been really tough for us. And so it was a hard decision I had to make. But we are committed to the plans we have in place for 2024. Without, when you look at pay equity, we have 32 athletes on our roster. I think there's about 60 who get paid to cycle full time in the US. So we have about 50%, and we pay them equally. So the salaries are allocated equally. And we are committed to that and continuing to do that. What was your other question?
The payout for the series.
So what happens with that is there was a quad crown that was eligible if someone won all four races. Now with the fourth race gone, there's a triple crown. The other change that we made, which is on our website, is we made an update to the rules. There's now points that are eligible during our qualifier, as well as more points that are eligible for the final lap, just to make it a bit more interesting.
So you've talked a lot about NCL being a startup, right? And it's not magic overnight. Poof, every plan that we write on the board whenever we create this league is going to happen. And so you need to pivot, which is what every startup needs to do. There's lessons learned. I mean, we've created businesses, so we know what it's like. There's lessons learned. That's, I think, a really valuable part of that process. What do you think about when you think about, and you're still very early on, what are the kind of the lessons that you've learned so far as part of this process of creating this league from scratch?
So having come into this in the CEO role for a couple of months now, I think the most important thing that we're going to do is reset budgets for 2024 and finalize a strategy plan, a 3-year strategy plan. But you guys know this better than anyone. Like, cycling companies have come and gone. Startups come and go.
Yep.
And it's my job and my, obligation, not only to our founders, our investors, but now our staff, athletes, and our fans, to ensure that we survive. The success of NCL is making the right decisions and building out that strategy to ensure that we're strategically setting ourselves up for success.
What about communication?
That's also good. Being a bit more transparent, and asking for a bit more patience back also from the media, because this is going to be a building process, but knowing that they can come to me anytime, we'll get there in time. And what we're building, I think, in the sports industry and cycling industry is unlike anything I've seen before, and will be special, but we'll be transparent as we're making changes. We're going to set realistic expectations. And I think I've done that even here with you guys today.
For sure. And you've got the support. I think what's important and what was unique from our perspective is that you have the support of a lot of investors that are professional league veterans, right? Like, so they understand how hard it is.
We have incredible investors. I wish we were recording this a week later, but stay tuned for 3 exciting announcements on the investor side, a couple on the partnership side, but we have Will Ventures, Founders Collective, Collab Capital, who's been so helpful in Atlanta, Jalen Ramsey of the Rams.
Florida State Seminole.
Yeah. Just, it's been amazing to look at this group of investors, diverse group of investors who sees what the future of sports and cycling can be, and want to be a part of it and double down on it.
Let's talk about you. You come into this role, you're leading this team. You've got a foundation to look back on in terms of your career. Talk to us a little bit about leadership, what that looks like for you. What are the big lessons in your life that you've had or experienced from great leaders? If you've got 3 or 4 kind of key guiding principles that you use when you think about your leadership.
Sure. I mean, a lot has changed in my career. I look back at the beginning of my career and my first role managing people. I was 23, managing the sales team for the New York Jets when we opened up MetLife Stadium. And I had people on my staff who had 10 years experience, 8 years experience, and this was my second year. And I felt like I had to overperform. So I didn't sleep for like 2 years. But I think each management and leadership role you're in, you continue to learn and, to lead a bit more with empathy, and understanding, to always be accessible. Thing I'm grateful for, frankly, and they say that experience is everything, is, you've seen a lot of the movie before. Like this, I used to have imposter syndrome for sure. And now I look at the NCL and it's exciting. The staff always jokes, they're like, nothing rattles you. And I was like, no, we got it. What is it? Tell me.
Yeah, I used to say that a lot. I would prefer to know instead of not knowing. It's a much better, and that creates I think a better culture for your people as well, knowing that they can bring you bad news, good news, and the reaction is going to be the same.
Yeah, and it helps you shelter also, because I feel like as a leader, part of the role is sheltering your teammates from things that might impact their mood or their attitude or their engagement day to day, things that they don't necessarily need to know every single moment, but that you need to know, and you can tactfully disseminate in a way that's positive and productive.
Anything else you want to share?
Just want people to join us and follow along. Follow us on NCL Racing, on Instagram, on Twitter. This is going to be, a wonderful journey to be a part of. And so,
and the
follow us.
The dates for the races, the dates for Denver.
Yes. If you're in Denver, come join us at Dick's Sporting Goods Park on August 13th, kicking off at 11 with a bike build with Wish for Wheels. And the event goes to 6 p.m., free to the public, free admission and free parking. And then in Atlanta on August 19th, join us at Bearings Bike Works for our qualifying event. Starts at 6 p.m. There'll be food trucks, kids activities, and incredibly exciting street sprints. And then the next day, August 20th, at the Porsche Experience Center. Visit us at www.nclracing.com for more information on VIP tickets for that event.
All off the dome. There were no notes being read at all. That was impressive. And then also we've got the community ride coming up this coming weekend, Saturday, July 20th. You're going to be there.
22nd.
Sorry, 22nd. I cannot get that right in my brain. You're going to be there. Paris will be there. So folks want to come meet you, talk to you, ask you questions. That's also encouraged. It's at Bearings Bike Works at 8 a.m. So we'll see you then. We're going to see you in person then.
Yeah. See you guys then.
Thanks for the time today. We're really excited about the NCL and everything that you all are doing.
It's great. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks.